Stapleton with Stapleton Direct Travel. At Stapleton Direct Travel, we teach you how to get the most out of your buck for your travel experiences. And we talk about AmaWaterways here. The company's been around for 25 years. Luxury river cruise company based in Calabasas, California. American led and family owned and operated by the same folks that established it 25 years ago. Hey, by 2032, they're going to have 50 ships in the water. Right now, they have 30. And it's a luxurious experience. You're pampered, you're well treated. You have ultimate experiences. I've been on one of these cruises back last August. I'm leaving in a couple of weeks for another one throughout Europe. So I'm expecting great things. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Africa, experiences you can have on safari trips and South African trips, West Africa, different parts of Africa. So it's going to be somewhat specialized. You won't see me on the video. You'll see photos of the different areas you'll be visiting on the itineraries that I'll be discussing, and I'll be narrating throughout. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage, relax. We're going to have a little chat tonight, talk about Africa. Maybe we'll see the big five: the elephant, the rhinoceros, black and white, the cheetah, and the lion. So we'll just check it out and see what we find out together. Okay, so stay tuned for more. So guys, we're going to start here. AmaWaterways for the last 12 years or so has been operating African safaris on the Chobe River. The program has grown so much over the past 10 years that they had to make some changes. They had to add some different itineraries to accommodate folks. They sell out really fast. The ships are not very large, so it's really challenging to keep everybody satisfied and getting the cruises they want. They've always had a 4-night cruise on the Chobe, and the other 3 days of the week feature a 3-night cruise and a somewhat of a up the ante program when it comes to different itineraries. And the highlights of these itineraries have been the Chobe River itself, the wildlife, the Victoria Falls, and Kruger National Park. They've had a short 10-day trip as well as a journey up to East Africa, and they've had their classic 15-night The Stars of South Africa sailing, which also includes the must-see highlights of Cape Town and Victoria Falls near Chobe, Johannesburg, and Kruger. Kruger is by far the most popular itinerary. Again, like I said before, these itineraries tend to set out 18 months in advance, so it's time for some changes to be made, some additional sailings. And as you can see on this slide toward the bottom here, they have from the Cape to the Falls, 9 nights, which is new. The African Wonders of the Skeleton, which is a new one. The classic Kenya and Southern Africa, and the iconic Africa, 14 nights. And we'll get into some of those and talk to them about a little bit more detail down the road here. Just to introduce some of the crew, there's Emily, who's in the front here. She's a cruise manager on the Zambezi Queen. Behind her is Frank Leviti, this fellow right there. And Frank is one of the tour directors. And the rest of the crew there is shown as well on the ship. Not all called by name. They are Namibians. They all live in the country of Namibia. So they give you an up close and personal cultural experience when you go to Africa. They love working and hosting guests, and they also have, as you can see, some of the biggest smiles you'll ever see in the world. That's really something. They're happy people. Happy people. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Zambezi Queen just a little bit. It's a small boat. It only has 14 suites. All the rooms have balconies. If you take a look here and see, let me see if I can get a laser pointer. Okay, right here is all your balconies on the outside of the ship. Not the top deck, but these lower decks are all balconies, all suites. They all have air conditioning, which is important in Africa, and it's on 3 levels, the ship. The top level is the lounge and the restaurant, as you can see, and the other levels are the room. There's a gift shop and a spa on board. You can see a typical room to the right here. That's an LS category. It actually has 2 balconies. One of those is a French balcony, and the other one is a walkout balcony. The lounge is an open bar, so everything is included with the exception of gratuities. Every night there's entertainment from the crew. One thing that constantly comes up is Wi-Fi, and there is Wi-Fi on the ship. Some people feel like they have to go out there to get the Wi-Fi, but it might be better up on the third deck than it is in your room. But remember, you're in the middle of nowhere, so if you get Wi-Fi, that's a plus. That's a miracle. So that's part of your experience. Self-run service is also available. The Zambezi Queen was last renovated about 3.5 years ago, so this fall the ship is going to go on another renovation. So it'll be out of service for 3 to 4 months, and then next March 2027 it's going to come out with a brand new look and feel. Right now it's pretty cool feeling in itself, especially on the top deck. You look out the window, the big balcony, you see the animals and the landscape and what's going on, the activity on the river. It's just amazing, guys. And I should bring up also what's the best cabin to stay 90% of the time won't be in your cabin. You're going to be on that top deck because that's where the movie is as it cruises up and down the river, if you can think of it in terms of a movie. And I know you're going to want to be at the top so you can see both sides, on both sides of the ship. The food on board is great as well. It's a 5-star program. Vegan and gluten-free options are available. If you have any dietary restrictions, they'll be glad to accommodate you. You want to make sure you communicate those well in advance because a lot of the food is brought in from the local sources, and they need to make sure that they make allowances to do that. You can choose from 3 different things on the menu for every menu. There's also a buffet at breakfast, and you can order simple things from a menu. The chef is local. She comes from a village. She works in the kitchen with her son. They'll accommodate you if you have any different restrictions other than what they've tried to do in advance for you. When you're on the Zambezi Queen, it's not like a river cruise like in Europe where every day is a new port of call. You're exploring 40 square kilometers of the Chobe River. The water actually originates up in the high mountains of Angola and works its way down. The river actually turns into the Zambezi River, which eventually goes over Victoria Falls. The area is teeming with wildlife. There are more animals per square mile or kilometer in this part of the world than anywhere else. So, if you're an elephant fan, this is the place you want to be. The safaris are in the morning and in the afternoon. and then in between, you might visit a village school. You can go fishing, you can go bird watching, you can hang out on the deck. The feeling of hanging out on the deck is so amazing. Most of us run every day, all day when we're not on vacation. We have crazy busy lives. We have knots in our stomach, right? Well, here, that knot is going to be gone within 36 hours once you're on board this ship. If you look at the back of this vessel here, this small safari vessel, you're going to see that there's a restroom on board. So if you're out for 2.5 hours, you don't have to worry about using a restroom. There's also a cooler in the back, so if you want to have a sip of wine or beer or soda or anything like that, you can help yourself as you're on the safari. And each vessel holds about 8 to 10 guests, so 28 people are not crammed on board this smaller boat. So the journey on the river is 3 nights as opposed to the other journey, which is 4 nights. The animals you'll see here will not include the big 5. You'll see the elephant, the lion, the cheetah, giraffes, buffalo, and a lot of zebras. But the rhino you will not see. But we'll talk a little bit later about where you will be able to see the rhino. There's actually a great zebra migration discovered about 15 years ago. One animal you won't see along the river, like I just said, is the rhino. We'll talk about that down the road. Pictures of the game that you'll see on your trek. Now, all the trips have the option of starting in Cape Town, which is highly recommended. This is an amazing city of up to 4 million people. It's incredibly multicultural. It's located on the southwesternmost tip of Africa, and there are nonstop flights from North America, Washington, Atlanta, and Newark. The hotel is a Belmont hotel called the Mount Nelson. Originally, it was built back in 1898, and they called it the Nelly. The hotel itself is over 125 years old, and it was the headquarters for the Boer War back in 1899 through 1901. After World War I, they painted the hotel pink because pink represents calmness and peace. And it was sort of a trend around the world at the time to use pink, which represents peace. Again, and ever since then, the hotels remained pink. Deluxe rooms are on the norm at this hotel. It's just outside of Cape Town. There's a little small, short transfer to the waterfront from the hotel, to and from the hotel. The hotels to go to a renovation, just like the ship was, mostly for plumbing, but that doesn't affect your stay. It's a beautiful hotel. Piano players in the lobby most days. Anyway, you'll spend 3 nights in Cape Town at the Mount Nelson. While in Cape Town, the highlights are visited, and one of them is a cable car, as you see here to the top of Table Mountain. The lighthouse there is actually part of Robben Island, which was a prison for over 100 years, and as you know, Nelson Mandela was also in prison there, unfortunately, for some time, a good deal of his life before he was freed. It was a place for people with leprosy and to quarantine on the island. Then it was a prison during apartheid, and this is where Nelson Mandela, like I said, spent almost 20 years. You get a tour of the prison led by Crystal, a former bodyguard, not a bodyguard, a security guard at the prison. But Crystal and Nelson became best friends while they were in prison, and Crystal remained friends up to that time that Nelson Mandela passed away. One of the other highlights that you get to see while you're in Cape Town, Africa, are the penguins, an endangered species. Today, there are about 2,000 to 3,000 African penguins on Boulders Beach. Other things you get to do in Cape Town is to meet the local community and visit an urban garden that locals have started in Cape Town. There's a dancing school and a choir. Cape Town, South Africa is known for its wine, so you'll take a trip out to a valley called Constantia Valley, part of the winelands, where you will experience wine tasting and dinner. So you do 3 nights in Cape Town, then you fly to the Chobe River and spend 3 nights on the Chobe River, and then head to Victoria Falls and stay at the historic Victoria Falls Hotel. The hotel has been renovated, all the deluxe rooms. It's absolutely spectacular and it overlooks the Victoria Falls. There's a hotel. So then you do 3 nights in Victoria Falls rather than 2 nights on the other program, the previous program. First thing will be time on the Zambezi River. You'll spend a late afternoon, evening sunset on the Zambezi Royal with cocktails, appetizers, and a local to give a talk about the area. That Zambezi Royal is that smaller ship I showed you earlier. He's going to talk about life and history of Victoria Falls, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. The new parts of this program includes a trip to Zambia. So there's the Royal. That's the ship I was talking about. There's one of the guides, some experiences. Okay, so you're going to take a trip over to Zambia. And you'll visit a local village on the Zambia side. You'll see a market and complete a walking tour on the Zimbabwe side of the falls. You'll take the bridge across Victoria Falls on the Zambia side. That's what you see people walking across here. You will actually walk across the bridge. You will see the rhino on this trip and another evening safari into the Livingstone National Park, where rhinos still live. After that, you'll take a safari out in the national park, an outdoor dinner out in the wild with a fire and some great food to end your time here. There's an option on this trip, and there's a helicopter ride over Victoria Falls. It's 10 to 12 minutes. You can buy it in addition to the other excursions that are offered for you. So there's your helicopter ride there. And that bridge you saw was the main bridge over the Victoria Falls. And another picture of the falls. That wasn't the bridge you would walk across. Then you're going to fly an hour down to Johannesburg. And your flights are included as part of your cruise. Everything is a one-cost deal. You spend 2 nights in Johannesburg. where you done the base program. Then you have a choice: Johannesburg, Kruger, Johannesburg over to Namibia. One of those two choices. In Johannesburg, you'll stay at the Fairmont Hotel. It's in a park-like setting. All the rooms are suites. Suites have a different ambiance. It could be Japanese, Chinese, European, either one of those. Johannesburg has a thriving art scene. The climate of Johannesburg is very similar to maybe the southern half of California. You can see some photos here. You see the hotel on the left. You see what looks like Southern California on the right. What's surprising about Johannesburg is it's one of the largest cities in South Africa. It's about 5,500 feet above sea level. The climate is cold nights in the wintertime. It's also the major city in the world that was developed without a waterway, like a river or a coastline for trade. It just sprung up in the middle of nowhere. So that's why it looks somewhat like Southern California. Next, you're going to head down to Soweto. Well, this after you're leaving Johannesburg, you'll see the photo here is depicting a couple of the murals that you see when you go into the city. But we're going to go down to Soweto, which means southwest. You look on the right side, you can see the artwork that the locals have done on the tower. That was that previous slide I just showed you. So Soweto was a township of over 1 million people. During apartheid, with the white population only 5%. If you were black, you had to live in this neighborhood, and it was called Soweto. And you could only have certain jobs in this particular area. And it wasn't until 1990s when they had the uprising in apartheid that ended. Now I said 5% that were in Soweto, white citizens. No, 5% was all of South Africa. 95% were black folks, and they had to live in Soweto. No choice. One of the tour directors, Frank Navidi, you saw on an earlier slide, was part of that uprising back in the 1990s. Isn't that ironic? Unfortunately, during the uprising and protests, his best friend next to him was shot. But it ended apartheid. And that day, now it's called World Youth Day. The place that you saw here is called the Clifton Youth Project, right here. This is run by Tulani. This educational experience is a part of every sailing. Because of the donations from our guests and others, AMA guests are the only ones that go to this place. What started with 30 students as a result of your giving has resulted in a huge school. It has 800 students now. The right-hand side top photo is what the neighborhood looks like around the school. Basically a slum. With this whole program, you go there to see the animals, but it's also about the people, it's about the food, it's about local activity. You do it all. If you just did animal safaris for 10 days, you'd be animaled out, safaried out. So this is why different experiences are offered along the way. And this is the Clifton Youth Center, like I said before. I found 5 students that the Clifton Youth Center thought would be good tour directors. This is about an 18-month program. It was a couple of years ago. You have to go to this 18-month school. I'm a sponsor 5 students to go to the tour director school 18 months ago, and you see them here in this photo. 5 or more in that photo that are part of the ones that graduated to be tour directors in that part of the continent. AmaWaterways paid their tuition, their food, and they graduated last month. They're holding their diplomas here. And because the whole program there has grown so much, these guys will be working for AmaWaterways. Yeah, local guides. Eventually, some of them will become tour directors to travel all of South Africa with AmaWaterways. That is too awesome, guys, too awesome. Ama has always been one that's given back to local communities, and that speaks very clearly and very loudly and really does change lives in these communities. Yeah, so after a couple of days in Johannesburg, you had the option of going to Kruger National Park. This is a classic national park where the majority of clients go to. AMA has a second lodge now used in Kruger Park. It's part of the Sabi Sabi lodges. It's called Sandringham, And Sandringham has 12 suites. Half of them are tents, half of them are regular suites, and you're seeing these here. So you're somewhat in the wild if you take this portion of the trip. But mosquito repellent is important, things like that. And I'm sure that the tent has sheeting up to keep the bugs out during the buggy times, so you don't get harassed by those guys. The Ama group will be staying in the tented suites, as you can see here. These are luxury suites with air conditioning, Wi-Fi, and such. Ama's other lodge uses regular suites, so they thought upgrading these a bit and tried tenant suites for 2028. So on August 4th, you'll have two different lodges you can choose for this itinerary. It's a classic 2-week trip: Cape Town, the cruise, Victoria Falls, Johannesburg, and 3 nights in Kruger as a tented safari. The lodges are always 5-star, all-inclusive, all your safaris, and they have a spa. The other option being provided is Namibia, which is just to the west of South Africa. It's a growing destination on the Atlantic coast. It's famous for its moonlight landscape and sand dunes. The sand dunes there can get up to 300 meters or 1,300 feet high, and it's a Mars-type landscape, as you can see. Very red. Remember pictures from Mars? Yeah, it's about as close as you get there if you don't take a spaceship, right? So then from the sand dunes, we're going to head to the coast. This is where the desert meets the sea. It's also known as the Skeleton Coast. It's littered with shipwrecks from the 17 and 1800s, when they started trading from Asia up to Europe 300 years ago. This is where a lot of shipwrecks occurred. They would survive the shipwreck and they would make it to the shore, but when they got to shore, it was just sand. It was desert. There was no water. So they had no way to desalinize. That's why they call it the Skeleton Coast, because you would survive the shipwrecks, but you wouldn't survive once you got to land. You'll be there for 2 nights, and then you'll head off to Etosha for another 2 nights. So that's Namibia. The other option you have is to fly up to Kenya, as you see here. They already have the Tanzania on one program. So here you're going to spend 7 days up in Kenya, where you'll spend 2 nights in Nairobi, 2 nights in Amboseli, and 3 nights in the Masai Mara. What makes this place an amazing destination is you can see Mount Kilimanjaro in the background here, 19,000 feet up in the air. And this next picture shows you the Masai Mara as part of Kenya. You will stay in tenant suites here again. The lodge chain is Ilawana, small, only 16 tents, all-inclusive luxury at Amboseli. There are morning and afternoon safaris as part of this trip. The next stop, like I said, is Masai Mara. You fly over, spend 3 nights out at a place called Pepper's Camp. As you can see in the photo here, it's named after the pepper trees in that area. This is again a very small resort. Tenant suite, only 9 suites. Morning and afternoon safaris are part of your trip. When does the migration go through this particular area? If you're trying to time it, you really can't. But late summer to mid-fall can be considered a time to go. But normally migration to this area with the wildebeest jumping across the rivers and the crocs there and stuff like that, yeah, I say July through to September. So 3 nights in the Masai Mara and the option of extending to take a short hour flight down to Zanzibar and spend 2 nights in Stone Town and 2 nights on the beach at a place called Barra Beach. Let me see if I can go back. I can't go back to screen here. I skipped over that. I wanted to show you the Stone Town, which is where the one of the group members from Queen was actually from that location. Walking city with cobblestone streets, 15,000 people live there now. It was settled back in the 1600s. Zanzibar used to be part of the country of Oman. It only became part of Tanzania back in the 1990s, and it was set up by Oman as sort of a slave trade center. Fortunately, that's all gone now. You're also going to go spend 2 nights on the beach overlooking the Indian Ocean. So 2 nights in Stone Town, walking tour, and a boat tour. Then head for your last 2 nights at a place called Barawa Beach, which I just talked about a moment ago. It's about an hour away from Stone Town, staying in these beautiful suites overlooking the Indian Ocean on all the options. You do have the option of heading to Rwanda, as you see the gorillas here, to see the gorillas and the golden monkeys. It is expensive, but I have to say Africa's a once in a lifetime trip. But this makes it even a higher level of a once in a lifetime if you have the opportunity to see the gorillas. So if you have the time, you have the money, I highly recommend you trying that out. It's an experience you'll never forget. So we have some questions I'd like to go over. Questions and answers that were provided on a recent webinar. I'd like to give you an idea of what to expect. Uh, Binoculars. The question came up about binoculars. Can you bring binoculars? There are binoculars on board, and when you're on safari and at the lodges, a safari guide will have binoculars. In a way, binoculars are perceived as like a security threat, and often, if you try to bring them, they may get confiscated at customs or immigration before you get into countries. So leave the binoculars at home. Okay, great. Does AMA provide assistance in obtaining visas for the Africa trips? On the website, there's a link where you can apply for your visas for Namibia, and it gives you instructions. And then Zimbabwe, you get it on arrival where the guys will help you do that. Tanzania, again, you can apply online, same with Zanzibar. The thing about Zanzibar is that you also have to have health insurance, which you buy from the government there, and you can do it online before you arrive. But South Africa, you do not need a visa. How could we comfort folks that are concerned about sustainability with the animals? Does AMA ensure the safety of the animals? In a different way, I'll give you 2 examples. I'll give you 2 stories that explain it. When they found out that elephants were actually put in barns to force them to be hungry and they were shackled until guests got there to feed them, they cut that out of their program because people were asking if they could feed the animals. So once AMA found out that was taking place, they weren't down with the cruelty to animals, so they stopped that process. Another part, they had a part where you could walk with the lions. Well, they found out the lions were being drugged, sort of like a sleeping drug. So they said, no, I'm not going to walk with the lions, not going to do that, because AmaWaterways cares about the environment and the animals and the communities that they serve, so they're not going to do that. So they're all drugged out. That was the only reason why you could walk with them and not be their dinner. They're never going to offer anything like that. And there's another example where if you pet a cheetah, there was folks that like to go to a pet where you can pet cheetahs all day in Johannesburg. So they thought about, well, how would you feel to be petted all day as an animal? So the animal might get irritable and turn against you. So they don't do that either. Okay, another question. If a person can only do one African experience, which of the itineraries do you think is the best to be recommended? They recommend Iconic Africa, which is the one that goes to our stars of South Africa. So the 2-week trip again is Cape Town, the ship, the cruise, Victoria Falls, Johannesburg, and Kruger. So you get an all-inclusive or all-encompassing trip if you take that one. Now, one more set of things I want to talk about here before we end today, and that is the last question. How should you pack for Africa? Are there special needs? Luggage is limited to 44 pounds on the flight, so you really have to pack relatively light. Sometimes they say don't wear bright colors. That attracts insects and stuff like that. Honestly, just t-shirts and shorts. Bring a long sleeve for the rainy season. You might want to have bug spray just in case. It brings up another thing, how to pack. When you're on the safaris, you're always going to see the animals. Whether you're wearing a red shirt, a black shirt, a purple shirt, it doesn't matter. The long pants or sleeves to protect yourself from the sun are important. There is malaria in Kenya, and there's malaria on Victoria Falls, anchovies, and a little bit in Kruger Park. So you need to take malaria medicine, or you should take malaria medicine to protect yourself. Malarone seems to be the most popular drug out there in terms of that and bring a sun hat. So that's it, guys. That's Africa. It's a lot to it. Just so you know, the trip started about $12,500 per person. Yes, that's what it said, 12,500. So you can count on it being $25,000 just for your airfare, just for your cruise. And yes, you still have to get airfare because I can't swim you over there. And um, you can take a boat, but it would take you an awful long time. You probably have to have a month to travel. So if you like to learn more about it, get started, uh, get set up for um, making your trip to Africa, your trip of a lifetime, get in touch with me. I'm going to try to be putting together a group of folks that would be interested in going with pricing for 2028. I'm going to get on that pretty quickly, give you time to save up and make payments and uh, be able to join that trip if you can. So that's what's on the radar for 2028 is next big overseas trip for me hopefully will be to Africa. And I like to do the safari as well. So guys, thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate you for being here. Again, like I always say, you're the reason why I'm here, why I do this. I want to be your agent of choice and let me plan all the details for you and all you have to do is pay for the trip. Thank you for coming. I will see you next week and have a good night.